Good morning. Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Journey Live. I'm Natalie Fairchild. I'm your heart. Martin, I got it right. Martin is the brain of the group. So it's been a while. We've had a little inconsistency. And when we said, yeah, let's do this thing live, it'll be great. We'll avoid the editing. Everyone's like, yeah, it's real fun until you have vacation and you're at conferences and then you got to change your dates. So, yep, we're learning.
Yeah, well, between vacations and conferences and life happening, we're back.
We're
Back again.
back. We're back, and I know you missed us. Happy Friday, everyone in the Pacific Northwest. It is currently sunny out, and in the Pacific Northwest, that's a really good thing. So, this morning, Martin, we are talking about partnership versus sole entrepreneur. And when I sent my letters out to people that follow us, it was a topic like, yeah, let's talk about that. There's a lot of people
Yeah.
that are thinking about going into business.
Mhm.
There's friends that are like, hey, we should do this together. um, there's marriage partnerships that start businesses together, and so
The
there's
ones that
a
need an extra challenge. Yeah.
yep. So, and I can talk about that one. And there's pros and cons to all of it, and then there's being solo where it's all on these shoulders,
Yep.
and there's pros and cons to that as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I'm just gonna go ahead and spoil the answer. There's no one answer,
yeah,
right?
well, yeah,
There's
for
it's
sure.
a really about a personal preference. I have a personal preference about it. I
Mhm.
have a I'm a solopreneur because I've done the other thing too. Right? So I
Right,
have now a preference about it, and I sort of know how I want to run things. But
right.
there's a lot of factors to examine. There's a lot of
Mhm.
things to talk about. There's a lot of things to evaluate if you're about to start a business and you're going to go at it alone. That's great. If you're about to start a business and you're beginning to think, maybe I need to partner up with someone, even then, right? Even after you've made that decision, there's things to consider. There's like
Okay, so
kind of
let's
partners in a sense.
yeah, right. So let's start with the partnership, because right
Okay.
now you're a sole entrepreneur and I'm 73% owner, so I'm
Yes.
I'm kind of sole as well, but I didn't start that way.
Right.
So, going back to my history, my husband Jim and I started Pacific Perks, and the pros were that you're not in it alone.
Mhm.
You have somebody to rely on, fall back on, um, until you don't. Um, side note, and you get to experience the highs and get together, and you get to figure out the lows together, for sure.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's kind of a pro. It was really an exciting time for us. Now, I think our kids felt like we were talking about work all the time,
Mhm.
so that can kind of be a con. Um, but then when you are married to somebody, you've got the dynamics of a marriage and a relationship and how you're doing in your personal life,
Layered
always
right on top of your business dynamics.
right in the same office space, you
Yes.
know? Um, and so that can be challenging. And I'd love to hear different examples from either people listening or, the people you've consulted with on that. Another thing about a partnership is we all know that we're good at certain things and not good at other things.
Hmm.
So when you partner with somebody, it's almost good to, have them be the brains and you're the creative visionary, we can do this type of person, and then the other person is a little bit more grounding.
Right.
Um, so that's a really good
Yeah.
thing to have when you're looking into a partner.
And if you take those two things, right, I would say that the latter is a way better reason to seek out partnership than the former.
Okay.
See, when you
Yeah.
start talking about there's certain things that I know this business is going to take, right? Insert type business there. I know it's going to take, you know, a numbers mind. I know it's going to
Mhm.
take uh, being out there with people, networking, talking about the business, getting people excited about it. Those two are significantly different personalities sometimes. And
Mhm.
you know somebody who can do this side and you can do this side really well, that will probably be a way better better reason to consider
Mhm.
with someone than, hey, I just need support so that I'm not going at it alone.
For
Because
sure. And I like you. That's not a good enough reason.
I'm being good enough really well in some cases. We
Yeah.
have we have Megan here in our show before,
Yeah.
and, I'm talking about Megan Kelly from Fermata.
Oh, yeah.
She has a really great partner relationship, right? And they started because they were friends and they were, but at the same time, what they identified as being the reason for the actual partnership is that they have different skill sets, right? And bring different things to the table. So
Yeah.
both those things combined, it's a really great formula. Not
Mhm.
everybody gets that lucky. But
Mhm.
so what I
Mhm.
was saying about the support system. So here's the thing. It's a business partner and a support system are very different things.
Yeah, good point.
I have a
Mhm.
really good support system. You know, my
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
wife is probably the biggest supporter I'll ever have in anything, and
Mhm.
we haven't done the business partnership thing.
Mhm.
Right? We're not
Mhm.
business partners. She is my partner on everything, but I'm a solopreneur by any stretch,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I get all the support I need. I have people like you. I have like it just I have all the support I need
Vice
without
versa. Yeah.
having to split my ownership, right? And
Right.
without having to split my responsibilities either,
Right.
right?
And
Which
to your point, as a sole entrepreneur, I have employees that have different skills that I have. I
yes,
have a business consultant. I have professional, all about bringing so you can. That's a great point.
exactly.
You can get the support in a million different areas. Um I think that there is a feeling sometimes as entrepreneurs or possibly starting the pie business, let's do this together. And we don't know
Yeah.
what we're doing, that,
It
not knowing.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I want everyone listening to really bring in their own personality and their own circumstances into listening to this conversation because it's so heavily geared through a personal preference. There is no right way. There is no right answer.
Yeah.
If you're paying me to be your consultant, I will probably, based on who you are, say to you, you should do this or that, right? But
Mhm.
but there's no one answer that I would give as a blanket. So that's the
Mhm.
first thing. Second thing is you want to make sure that when you're thinking about being a partner with someone, even then there's other things to think about, right? Like for instance, my advice to people is never do 50-50.
Mhm.
Never do 50-50. Here's why. Because it's practically impossible to split the responsibilities of a company in that way, right? Like, equality in that sense is like
Yeah.
it's almost a pipe dream because the business will evolve, right? In the beginning, it may need such heavy, I don't know, business development, right?
Mhm.
But then on the back end, it's going to need really heavy operational
Mhm.
activities, right? It's going to need really heavy financial controls. So it's never going to be something that you can really like split down the middle. So
So
when you split something down the middle,
and
that is
how?
that is not splittable down the middle, there's always somebody who's feeling like
Right.
they didn't get everything they wanted, right?
Right.
Instead, if you come into it from this perspective and say, look, this business is going to take this amount of effort in this direction and I'm really good at that and it's going to take a lot of support on this direction, why don't we start at 60-40? Right, let's start at 60-40,
Is
and
anybody's hair crawling up on the back of their head? Who
I'm
gets the
hoping
40? Not me, Martin.
it,
No,
but that's exactly how it goes, you know,
yeah.
like People
Yeah.
don't like having the conversation, but that's exactly how it ends up going. There's
But you
always
said
somebody
things
who's
will
driving.
change, though.
Yes,
Things will change and evolve.
and then you can change that. And then if it changes to the point that you're like now flipping the level of responsibility, you can flip the ownership too.
Which is a process. You've gotta
It's a
legally do
process,
that.
but it's not impossible.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Oh,
Yeah, you shouldn't do it every month, right? But
right.
you can do it every year. You
Mm,
have to renew your business
mm,
any year,
mhm.
every year as it is, right? Your
Okay,
business registration to the state, you have to
right.
renew it. So if you've gotten to that point, you can make addendums
Yeah.
to your operational agreement.
Now, if the partnership is man and woman identifying,
Yes.
then you want a lot of times for the woman to have more of the ownership for benefits, government contracts, women owned business. They have to be over 50% ownership. So
And
that's what we did.
that is definitely something to think about,
Hmm.
right? When you're going into it, there's
Hmm.
reasons for it.
Hmm.
That you
Yeah.
can take advantage of benefits that
Hmm.
exist. And Candace is right. It's something that stresses people out. And my best advice on that is everything can be handled in conversation, right? The problem is when you avoid having the conversation, you know
Hmm.
you're going to be putting in more effort than your partner. You just
Hmm.
know it going in, but you go,
Hmm.
okay, well, let's
Hmm.
go 50-50. And that
Yeah.
is a recipe for
Yeah.
future disaster, right? Somebody's going
Absolutely.
to be resentful.
Absolutely.
And
So I get that purpose.
yeah,
If you know, like you're saying, I get
yeah,
that. That is a conversation you need to have because the resentment's there
yeah.
from day one. But if you feel like it's 50-50 and
Do
you are like
49-51.
me, okay, if you're like me and there's this simple box and you're like, I'm
It's
not
just
going to be
so easy.
updating
Yeah,
my business percentage
yep,
every year,
yep.
that sounds like too much to me. He
Do
says 40,
51-49.
and hopefully your partner's a woman, so there's justification, no
Do
resentment.
51-49 because here's
Or
what's going to happen.
minority, right? Or
Yeah,
minority.
think about think about things go fantastically, which by the way is the reason to plan ownership, to plan distributions, to plan splits. The reason to plan all that is not the business fails. The business fails, everybody goes home, right? But if the business does well, that's when that kind of stuff is going to become really important. So if you do 49-51 and somebody comes to you and says, hey, you guys are doing fantastic. I want to buy you for 7 times your initial valuation. Somebody needs to make that decision.
Mhm,
And two people going against each other
mhm,
about that decision, it's not going to work.
mhm. Yeah.
Somebody needs to be able to, in a pinch, should we get to an impasse, somebody
Mhm,
needs to be able to make that decision, which is easier on a three-way split, right? If you're
mhm,
33.33% owners each, that's easy, it's two votes.
mhm,
But if you
mhm.
are two people and you're establishing a partnership, if you get nothing else out of today's show, just say 49-51.
So that there's somebody
So there's somebody who
who can make a
ultimately can
decision.
make a decision.
Mhm. So would you how do you feel about friends going into business together? I mean, it happens a lot.
Say that again.
How do you feel about friends going into business together?
Well,
It
yeah,
happens a lot.
there's an argument for it, right? There's an
Mhm,
argument for it, but that shouldn't be the only reason,
mhm.
right? It
Right.
should definitely not be the only reason.
Mhm.
If you know that your friend is the I forget my wallet all the time type, right? As much as you like him, that's going to be a thing
Martin,
that
you
is
know you're
going.
talking about me.
Is that a thing you do?
Or insert phone.
I know people that never remember to take their wallet anywhere, but that's the thing, like, and I'm just joking about the
Right.
example, but
Right.
you know that there's something about their personality. You know them well, right? You know that they
Mhm.
in a crisis they shut down. You know that
Mm.
that they're not reliable to communicate when things are not going well. That's me, by the way. Like if you
Mhm.
like I shut down when things are not going well and you don't hear from me, there's probably something wrong. But that's the type of things you would know about someone if you're friends,
Mhm.
that you should go into eyes wide open.
And if you are going in partnership with a friend,
Mhm.
you need to know that the end result, you might lose that relationship.
You may, and here's the thing. Part of the problem of going at it with friends is that people think that because you're friends, you don't need all the things you would need with a non-friend person.
And you need it
You
more.
need agreements, you need contracts, you need clear lines of demarcation, you need responsibility outlines, you need to establish who does what, when, and who is that person accountable for those results too.
Mhm.
See,
Yep.
it almost takes more structure than it would with
Mhm.
than it would with another
Yeah.
person, right, that is not your friend.
Right. It's like the college roommate situation, you know? I saw it
Yes,
several times. It's like, are you gonna talk to them about the cleaning schedule or just keep bitching about it?
absolutely. Like my son is about to move in with some people.
Really?
I know that's happening,
Woo!
right? And it's great. It's a good time, right? But the amount of times that I've said, well, you need an agreement for that. I stopped counting, right? Because in there needs to be a rental agreement. Like left to his own devices, he would have been like, "Oh yeah, we all get along, so we're just gonna do it." And
Mhm.
you can't just do it.
Mhm.
In business, it's the same. There is a lot of freedom at the beginning. There's
Mhm.
a lot of I'll be the first one to tell people that you don't need to register your business until you actually know that there will be a business, right?
Mhm.
You need to go
Mhm.
and do things. You need to sell a couple of things. You need to see
Mhm.
how that's going to see how people are going to respond to pricing. You need to do
Mhm.
all of those things before you're even calling yourself a business.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
But once you get to those places, you
Mhm.
do need all of those agreements and you need all of those on paper commitments to each other,
Yeah, and then
especially if you're
mhm.
friends.
Right, and then that eliminates the potential conflict of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about some pros of having a partnership.
Yes. The
Go
the
ahead.
the
No.
best pro that I've ever found is what you were bringing up at the beginning, right? Like if somebody can complement something you're not good at,
Mhm.
that is a really good partner for you.
Yeah.
If somebody brings something to the table that you're going to need and that you don't have, first of all, congrats on having that kind of personal awareness, right?
Yes. Very
Because
important.
it shows maturity. And
Mhm.
I think that maturity is one of those things that you do need to start a business. But if you know that, right, and you're aware enough and adult enough to recognize the things you're not good at,
Mhm.
again, the measure for success is bring in someone who can and then get out of the way.
Yeah. Right.
If you don't
Exactly.
get out of the way, that's going to still
Exactly.
be a problem.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So,
100%.
but
Yeah.
but that is the best reason to have that, right?
Any other reasons that come up? I'm trying to think. We talked about the support and how you can get that elsewhere.
Yeah.
It is fun to be in business with somebody and enjoy the success and the conquering challenges.
In the solopreneur side, I always talk about the distinction between being alone and being lonely.
Mhm,
See,
mhm,
you can go at a lot of things alone, right? But if
mhm,
they're also making you lonely, that is
mhm,
probably not something sustainable, not something
mhm,
sustainable in the long run. So, an advantage something I would call more of a side effect than an advantage is that if you have a partner, right, there's a certain level of outside your head conversation that is always happening,
Mhm.
and that's valuable. Now,
Mhm. Mhm.
I know that I can get that without needing a partner that I split my business with,
Again,
right?
yeah,
So,
it's kinda like the support thing. Like, you have people in your life who can challenge you and
but but if it's built in, right? If you're like literally sitting next to each other, and you're
Mhm.
bringing up things about the business constantly, and
Mhm.
sharing that back and forth that is so
Mhm.
valuable for business creativity, that is great. People who find that, right, and that conversation doesn't really die off, and that
Mhm.
conversation actually grows and enriches itself, that's a great way to leverage a
Mhm.
partner.
Yeah. And you know your partner's gonna drive you crazy, and you know
Sure.
you're gonna love and adore them as well. Just like any close relationship, this is a close relationship.
They need to challenge you, like, again, that's another thing that you should look for. If you have decided that you're going to do a business with partners, partner or partners, you should find people who challenge you, and they're not afraid to do that.
Mhm.
They're comfortable challenging you. They're
Right.
comfortable doing it. You know, for the longest time, whenever I was part of a business, uh, I never really had a problem with taking a smaller cut than the 50%,
Mm.
because I operate really well as a business number two. I operate
Okay.
really well as an operations person, right? That is sort of
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
niche, and I have no problem being the one who is there to shoot holes, who's there to have the challenging ideas around somebody's vision. Right? Somebody has this
Yeah.
vision, and I am the one who's always able to say, "Okay, yeah, we can make that happen. We can go this way, this way, this way. This one costs this much. This one costs this much. This one costs this much,
Yeah.
and it causes this outcomes." Right? And then present them back as an option,
You're the
and then
buzzkill.
and I'm happy to take that. I'm happy to take that role.
So, is that role typically the operations brainy analytical person? Is that typically what you see is the person taking less percentage? Or, I mean, I'd imagine there's a lot of variables,
That,
like
that
minority, women, a lot of factors you want to, but
again,
also,
again,
yeah.
you can always go, because a 49-51 partnership is almost an equal partnership,
Hmm.
right? You've just built
Hmm.
in a little bit of a safeguard for what we talked about, decision making, or something like that. But if you were looking at, okay, well, I want to bring in someone, the businesses of a certain size that I can bring in someone at 30%, and that means something to them, right? I mean, we're talking about certain size business where that's going to
Hmm.
make sense. Yeah, an operations person who is aware of what they can do would probably be okay bring coming in at that point, coming in and
Hmm.
taking a smaller percentage, just because they know they can impact the bigger picture.
And it's got to depend on the person too,
Right. Yeah.
how
So
self aware they are. And
I've been at 30%, I've been at 40%, and I've been at 49%. Right. I've experienced sort of the three tiers of that, if you will.
hmm.
And all of them operated just about the same. Right. I
Hmm.
had somebody who was really visionary, right? They were constantly coming up with ideas. And
Hmm.
we're sort of straddling the topic of next week.
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm. Yeah,
but they were always coming up with ideas, and my job was to bring those ideas to, actually doable steps, right?
right.
This is how we would approach that idea if we were to go in that direction, and these are the consequences of that, right? You call it buzzkill, but I call it, the
I like
person
to give you time.
figures out the how.
Yeah,
Right, the
yeah,
person on top, or the visionary, or, like, if you want to talk C-suite, right, they're the CEO. They figured out the what is the company going to do, what market we're going to tackle, what products are we going to bring to the table. Like they're
Yeah.
always answering that question, right? They're what, and I always call them like organized problem makers, because they're bringing problems to you. They're constantly
Right.
saying, hey, if we wanted to go after this whole new market where we have no footing, how would we do that? And then
Right.
that's an operations person will be able to say, well, okay, given what that market looks like. And so there'll be that level of cooperation.
And
And,
groundedness,
and yeah,
very
and
much.
like I said, I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
no problem for myself thinking that is a support position versus a an equal level position.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So, soul entrepreneurship, if we switch over there a little bit.
Yeah.
So now, one thing I was thinking of is that you've got, if you're starting a very small business, like
Mhm.
there's you and possibly a partner, and you hire a couple employees, I would
Mhm.
think it would be a huge benefit to have that operations person and the creative, because you do
Yep.
need somebody to ground you, because if we're
Yep.
just creative all the time, nothing really ever happens. We just keep dreaming of the next thing. So there's definitely benefit there, where I'm at a point where I've got my grounded person on my team as an employee and
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
business partner.
Yep.
um so for soul entrepreneurship, if we shift a little bit to that, um the benefits are that you don't have to compete with somebody or worry about where they're at. You can follow your intuition, you can follow your gut, you can follow your knowledge,
Right.
and you can make decisions and you can make them happen.
Yes, and what's on the background is there's also a myth or a mythology around being a solopreneur. Okay,
Mhm,
mythology is that you have to do it all,
mhm, right.
and
No
you
one
don't.
no, no, no. No one has to do it all. It
And like
Yeah,
there's no scenario
yeah,
where you have to do it all, right? Now
yeah.
you do have to get big enough to allow
Mhm,
for other people to
mhm,
do it, but you don't
yeah,
have to do it all, right?
yeah.
And in two of the scenarios that I told you about how I had ownership in companies,
Mhm,
it didn't start that way. I started as an employee, right? I
mm,
started as
mhm,
somebody who was brought in because I had operational knowledge and
mhm,
I was an employee, and we
mhm,
got to a certain size where it made sense to reward me with equity.
mhm, mhm,
But in the other scenarios, I was my initial approach, how I was brought in, was somebody
mhm,
recognizing that they had really good ideas that the market
mhm,
was beginning to respond to, but they couldn't do it alone, right? They could
mhm,
not jump from this
mhm,
constant creative mindset to like, okay, let's just get some execution going. And a lot
mhm,
of them already had employees, right? They already had people doing some of the work, but there were still that bridge missing of who was going to bring sizable chunks to do for all the
mhm.
people that were already performing tasks. So
Yeah,
that's how I came in.
yeah.
So in a smaller scale, right? Let's say that somebody's building up something small. The logic needs to be, you may not need an operations person, but you will need somebody who will take mundane, repeatable,
Mhm.
or really well structured tasks away from you so
Yeah.
that you can be freed up to do all the rest.
Yep. Working on your business, not in it. But
Ex-
yeah, just to the point of not doing it all. So this is something I am super passionate about. I've gone through my life personally and professionally thinking it was all on me. I've fallen off that pedestal. I've had to figure that out and rebuild that. And that is shown in Pacific Perks from the top down. So I just love to get on the soapbox on this one too and just say, especially for women, there's so many women business owners out there that are amazing, and you do not have to do it all. And that was the silver lining of Jim, my husband, having a disability, because we literally couldn't do it all. And
Mhm.
so we had to outsource, and it was a really, really good practice to be forced into, because I know people in my same situation who then fell into absolute burnout, and then
Yep.
the business is gone. So, yes, if you hear nothing else, you do not have to do it alone, whether you are a sole entrepreneur or have a partner. So,
Yeah. And I think it had to do with your question that you had suggested. Okay, is it okay to stay small?
mhm,
Well, the
mhm,
first answer is absolutely. Right?
mhm.
It's totally okay to stay small. Um, One of the tenets of my consulting is you need to be happy with what you're doing, right?
Number 1. Mhm,
If it's beginning to kill you, or if it's beginning to
mhm,
suck your soul,
mhm.
you're probably doing it wrong,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
You're probably stretching too much, or you're probably not bringing in the people you need to bring in. But again, this is that place where people don't seem to understand that they have a lot more options than the obvious ones. Right? The obvious options are, okay, I either need a bunch of employees or I need a partner or partners. And there's a lot of stuff in between that you
Mhm.
can do before you commit to one of those sort of um, more adult directions, right? You can outsource a lot of what you do,
Absolutely.
and all you need to figure out how to do when it comes to outsourcing is just figure out the economics of it,
Mhm, mhm.
right?
Yeah, there's
If
virtual assistants, there's
there's
professional services, there's all kinds of things.
and honestly, if you were not asking me this, but if you were asking me what the future of business is, that is the future of business,
Mhm.
right? The future of
Yeah.
business is the gig economy meeting the entrepreneurship economy.
Mhm.
It's already happening. You mentioned virtual assistants and all that, and those have been around for a long time, right? But they're getting better.
Yes.
Automation is allowing for a lot, right?
Yep. Yep.
And
Delivery services are really helping as well. Mhm.
and there's just so much you can do by taking the effort of sectioning off a portion of your business and saying, this is what this looks like, right? The steps are this.
Mhm.
And again, again, straddling into next week's topic, that is where you make it possible to have other people do some of the work that you need by
Mhm.
creating good processes, by creating duplicable process, by creating something that you can actually give to somebody, give them some training, and then they'll be able to execute time and time and time and time again.
'Cause how
Be-
many how many times do we say, "I don't wanna bring somebody on, I don't have time to train them."
oh,
Next week, we'll talk a little bit about that,
yes.
how to do that, spend a little bit of time to save a ton of time later. Okay, so the myth, like, I've always heard the myth, like, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Mm,
However, um, my dad is a perfect example. Was an entrepreneur, electrician. He worked for the big commercial and then went on his own.
mhm,
One man show, kept it that way for decades
yep.
and didn't want employees, didn't want to deal with employees.
Mhm,
And it was very simple solution for him and it worked for him and it was very successful. And he raised, we had family of 5 and they were able to pay for our college, which was amazing, and, um, have enough,
yes.
middle and for us, you have to define it. What is success to you? And that
Right.
was success, and, he's doing great in retirement, and that worked out perfect. And sometimes he'd bring in, big projects. He'd bring somebody in contract to help, but
and
it was
and that's
short-lived.
the point, right? The point is that there's a lot of mm, myths around all of this. I fully agree that if you're not growing, you're dying,
You
right?
do,
I fully agree.
because I
But
thought I heard that
but
from
there's
you.
but there's a lot of ways to grow. You
Okay.
don't grow by bringing in a bunch of employees. For some businesses, that's actually a the beginning of a decline. But
Right.
you can grow by reaching more customers. You can grow by eh, leveraging what you do in a different way, and we'll talk about that in a second. You can uh, build ways to have outsourcing be the source of your business. Sounds like your dad was doing a little bit of building ways of generating customers that then were
Mhm.
fulfilled by subcontractors.
Well, he would bring them on. But so if you're a one-man show,
Mhm.
let's talk about that a little bit. So the cons, the pros and the cons there.
Yes.
You're a one-man show, you go on vacation, you're not bringing in money, right?
Yes.
And
Well,
so yeah,
potentially you're not.
right. So we can talk about some creative ways, but that happens most of the time. If you're the
Yes.
one person
Yes.
doing the work,
Right.
you're not getting paid.
Not in that moment. No.
No. Yeah, not in that moment. I
Yeah.
mean, things are coming in, but that's one thing to consider as well. I
And
kind of went off tangent and there.
no, that's perfect. No, it's the actual question that we need to answer, because here's what happens. Yes, if you are, in a lot of cases, if you are a solopreneur or a one man show, like you said, what you're doing is exchanging time for money, right? You're exchanging your time for money.
Yes.
Hence,
Yeah.
if you cannot,
Yeah.
since if you're not available, if you cannot give any of that time, you're getting no money, right? But
Right.
if you go back to episode one and define what is success,
Mhm.
right? Success is the ability to call your own shots, right? And still
Mhm.
make a decent living,
Mhm.
right? So
Yes.
if you're
100%.
if you're a one man show and you start off by saying, "Look, what do I need to do to make enough of a living by working 48 weeks out of the year?"
Mhm.
And you start with that, right? And you know that those extra 4 weeks are your vacation time. They're your being away with family time.
I
For some
love
of
the
us,
idea. I love the idea. This is a great life hack. Just, however, I think most sole entrepreneurs
don't operate that way.
don't operate that way, which we should change our thinking, but there's guilt around it. How
Sure.
can I go to Europe for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
How can I ever do that until I retire?
Right.
Um, or you kill yourself before and you kill yourself after
Yeah.
to make up for it. And is that worth it? And that's a real challenge for people.
It is. And again, right, you should probably not kill yourself at any point, right? But
Right.
again, part of this notion that if you're a one man show and you go on vacation, there's some sort of like guilt to be had, or there's some sort of like money loss. That is part of the programming, if you will, that we all have from having been in corporate America,
Yeah.
right? Where you have the
Totally.
PTO thing that, oh yeah, they're gonna pay me to go on vacation. No, they're not paying you to go on vacation. They're just splitting up the amount of money they give you per year, and you just happen to not be there a couple weeks a year,
I've
right?
never thought of it in that
It's
like
the
that. Yeah.
exact same thing that you're doing if you're a solo guy, where like
Mhm.
that's the case. Now, here's the thing: I meet with people weekly, and if I'm gonna take a week off, I have to figure that out, right? I have to like
Right. You're a
put
perfect
it
example.
I have to put in some work before and some work after. But here's the thing. I love what I do. If I had won the $2 billion Powerball last week, I would still be doing this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We all need purpose and
So
you should be doing what you love in
so
some capacity.
for me to front load my meetings is more about not leaving people without than it is something I need in order to keep going.
Yes, but even that
It's by
statement,
design.
I'm going to be the buzzkill here. Even that statement,
Finally.
it's it's the feeling of disappointing people or not being there for them while you're on vacation. It even seeps in there,
Yeah. And
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 so
and
it's
look,
just a reality of soul entrepreneurship. I love the life hacks. You shouldn't kill yourself. You shouldn't feel
nope.
guilty. However, I think it comes up quite a bit when
Yeah,
I'm
look, I mean,
talking to people.
if you're a therapist, you go on vacation and you leave your phone on for your suicidal guys, right?
Mhm.
It's it's something that
Mhm.
is part of who you are. For
Mhm.
me, it's part of who I am to support businesses in the
Mhm.
situations that arise for them. So I
Mhm.
know that situations will arise, and that's why I front load my
Mhm.
meetings a little bit. But
Mhm.
I could just say, "Hey, I'm out next week," right? We'll just rolling
Mhm.
it out. We're skipping it.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
just not doing it.
Yeah.
And that's for a lot of them, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Because we do
Yeah.
a bunch of other things that are not included in our direct one-on-one time,
Mhm.
and they go, "Oh, no, you go enjoy your vacation."
And
Like,
maybe I'm
I have the
speaking
most
to women.
supportive group I have the most supportive group of people.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to have great clients, right? Don't have the pain in the ass clients,
It
because
wants
your
Yes,
clients I would just be like, "Fine, great. Have fun. I'll call you if there's a fire. Don't
exactly.
answer."
Eh, leave a
But I
leave a
think
message.
but I think I'm also speaking to women. I think men do it very differently. They can shut off sometimes, I think,
Yeah,
better than women can. And there's that feeling of taking care of people
yep,
and getting them what they need and not disappointing them. I don't know what the answer is to it. I mean, there's definitely some tactics,
yeah.
but I just want to bring it up because I know it's there. And I
Sure.
know as a sole entrepreneur, that's something that you will go through. My dad didn't ever do a 2-week vacation until he retired, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yep.
I absolutely love my flexibility. I
I
can
definitely.
book Australia and change the date, and I don't need to check with anybody.
Mhm.
And, I have all the time and the flexibility to do that.
Yeah, but why don't you need to check with anybody?
Because rolling into our next podcast, because I've set up systems, I've set up an incredible team,
You
and I'm
have
not
people.
in the day to day.
You have people, right? And, depending on what somebody does, they can also set systems. See, for let's
Okay,
say let's
let's
play a
take an
solopreneur.
example. Yeah,
Let's take a
okay.
solopreneur
Okay,
like
let's
your dad. Let's the
no,
electrician.
okay. I was gonna do the manicurist.
Okay, let's do
Let's
the
do a
manicurist.
woman. Let's do something around
No, there's
for
a
the
lot of
smart
women
woman.
electricians that are amazing.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I know, and I love it. I'm talking about the women that have a hard time.
You mean service people, right?
Well, yeah, service
They're selling
people,
a
and
service. They're selling
yeah,
a service. Okay.
let's talk about that.
So let's say that somebody sells a service and let's call it manicure, just for the sake of the example. There's a certain amount of time that that business requires for business development, right?
Mhm.
And right
Mhm.
now, it's either, if it's done right, it's either all woven in to the normal day to day,
Mhm.
or she does it
Mhm.
after hours, or like
Mhm.
in that kind of stuff, right? Like that kind of activities that always
Mhm.
need to be happening for a business to maintain the flow.
Yeah.
That is the kind of activities that you can A, outsource, B, automate, right? And C, sort of pre-program,
Mhm.
right? If part of her process is to email a bunch of customers going like, "Hey, it's been 3 months since we've done your nails, right? Why don't you come back?" That is something that you can uh, pre-program for when you're gone.
Mhm. But then
If
you're not there to respond unless you have a virtual assistant, which
Well,
that
you don't
could be an
necessarily
idea.
need a virtual assistant. You can have calendar applications
Yeah,
that allow people to book themselves and that are
absolutely.
connected to your calendar.
Duh, yes.
There's
Uh-huh.
there's a lot that somebody needs to do. I guess the point I'm bringing up is that it is possible. It
Mhm.
is not that distinct from what people do in a W-2, which is,
Mhm.
yeah, you're going to take 2 weeks vacations, you're going to be paid while you're away, but you will leave in the middle of a uptick of work and you will come
Mhm.
back to an uptick of work, right?
Mhm.
That's exactly
Mhm.
how people do it. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily the best way either.
Mhm.
So you can also set systems inside of a job, by the way, but
Mhm. Yeah.
that's for another day. But that person, right, that needs certain activities done for their
Mhm.
business can take the time off if the business continues to produce something for her when she's gone.
Mhm.
It's going to produce more engagements for when she's back, or it's going to produce uh, new ways to engage. Right? She could actually invite someone and split the profits with them on the time covering those 2 weeks
Mhm.
vacations.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity to think about income, passive income, and ways that you can have another little something you offer within a service business that brings in that passive income as well
That's a
along the
great
way.
point. It is my experience that good solopreneurs, the ones who are like always looking at how to enhance what they're doing, which is maybe another thing to talk about in a second here, but the ones who are always looking at ways to enhance what they're doing usually get pretty inspired by having taken some time off. And
Mhm.
sometimes
Mhm.
shit happens,
Mhm.
right? And you get
Mhm.
sick and you like couldn't
Mhm.
plan or pre-plan for a week. And
Mhm.
yet when you're in the middle of it, you made some stuff happen and then you go, I could actually make that happen all the time.
Mhm.
See, for our manicurist person, what she could do is she could bring in a pop up of an artist that she thinks is doing some interesting things and invite
Mhm.
all of her customers to come do a one time pop up and just collect a portion of that.
Mhm.
If that goes well, she'll be like, well, I'll do that every month.
Mhm.
I put in 0 hours for that other than promoting it, and then I still get this level of
Mhm.
income that I had not that I didn't have to
Mhm.
work for. I didn't
Yeah,
have
it's a
to
great idea.
exchange. I didn't have to exchange my
Mhm.
time for, right?
Mhm.
Which is your question from a second ago. But before I go
Mhm.
there, I want to say something about, again, the myth of solopreneurship. What you don't want to do if you're a solo is you don't want to dig in your heels on, I have to do it all.
Mhm.
There's a certain ego check that goes in there,
100%.
right? There's a certain ego check that needs to be done, but bringing in other people who can do something similar to what you do or something complementary to what you do or something
Mhm.
that is a an add-on. The add-on piece is probably the best part to think
Mhm.
about, right? You want to start
Mhm.
thinking about what adds on or fits with or always goes with what I do,
Mhm.
that would make sense to bring in, that would make sense to add to this.
Mhm.
And then, rolling into this, there's a conversation for, okay, well, let's say that there's something you do all the time and it's just like it's high demand and people always want it, people always respond well to, like, that's when you got to start thinking about repackaging what you do in a way, right? So what I do is a lot of one-on-one consulting. There's a lot of, okay, what's going on for you today that we need to talk about.
Mhm.
uh, but there's a lot of commonplaces. There's a lot of things that I have to educate people on before they can even hear some of the other levels,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that becomes repetitive, right? That is stuff that I do
Mm.
all the time. That is stuff that I get. So
Mhm.
if I start turning that into courses, into programs, into things that
Right.
are sort of standalone-ish,
Mastermind. Mhm.
that that allows for me to do a couple things. I can put groups of people together and deliver it in one single swoop, or I can put it in digital formats or in document formats and have them consume it at their own pace,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that's a way to leverage that, what you do, time for money trade up. So it is
100%.
possible. It is possible, right? For me, the best place to look for things to outsource, however, is the things that are not directly revenue producing. Because again, if you started a business because you're passionate about something, there's a chance that by now you've had the experience of like, I still love doing that. I don't love doing all the other shit that I have to do in order to be able to do that,
100%.
right?
100%. You
So
find that out real quick.
in that case, what you have to get good at is basic math. You have to get good at knowing, right? You have to get good at knowing how much that costs if
Mhm.
you are the one removed from being able to see clients or being able to do the work or the thing that you
Mhm.
actually
Yeah.
like. How much does
Yeah.
that cost really if it's you doing it versus if you pay for it?
And I had to go through that.
Mhm.
There
I
was a
remember.
point. Yeah, there was a point where the advice was, you need to stop being on the front lines and work on your business. Then I'm like, but that's money, like right there.
Mhm.
And yeah, it took a little bit of adjustment and perspective, and it allowed us to grow. I mean,
It
I shifted my attention to doing events, to working on the business, and it allowed the business to grow.
it happens almost instantaneously for solopreneurs, but there's a moment where you become more expensive to the business than if you were to outsource yourself,
Yeah. Yeah, for
right?
sure. For sure. And you can feel it. And being self-aware is really important. We've talked about that a lot.
Yes.
Knowing, okay, something's not working, or I feel like I'm trying to do everything. Like stopping, noticing that, getting some consulting, trying some different things, seeing different perspectives. So
Right.
wrapping up,
Yes.
definitely, we've learned a lot about soul entrepreneurship and partnership. So partnership, it can't be because you like them as a friend that you want to go into business with.
It can be only for that.
Only for that. So
Yes.
really,
It helps.
it's a real good idea if that person has the opposite skill set as you, and you can see that, and you can see that as a value. Um, but it's going to be like a personal relationship, because it is a personal relationship and a business relationship, and you have to know how relationships go.
Yep.
They go
Yep.
up and down, and there's challenges, and you love them, and sometimes you want to kick them to the curb. So
Yes.
that is that. So, and then the sole entrepreneurship
Don't do
is,
50-50s either.
oh, don't do 50-50s either. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah. My advice is set it up kind of where you think it should be, and then leave it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Leave it alone, but don't set it as a 50-50 because you will have to change it.
Because you will have to change it. There you go. And then sole entrepreneurship is, the flexibility, the freedom, the not having another person,
Yes.
and you can still get support through other
Right.
avenues and the community and all of that. So there's no right answer. It's just there's pros and cons and what works best for you.
Yeah. And if someone's at that crossroad, talk to someone.
Mhm.
If you're leaning to the partnership side, talk to a group of partners.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just ask them questions. What about being partners has worked well for you? What about it hasn't? Like,
It depends
talk
on
to
the
somebody
day.
who's excited. That
Mhm.
may be the
Mhm.
answer, right?
Mhm.
And if you're leaning on solo, just remember, right, that uh, and this is advice for life. In your head is a pretty lonely place to be.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Talk to people. It doesn't mean that you need to invite them to your business. You can still
Mhm.
talk to people.
Hmm.
You can still
Right.
ask advice, ask other solos how they're doing, right? What is it that is the hardest thing? What would they do differently? Talk to a consultant who works with solopreneurs and be like, hey, what are the factors that I haven't thought about that I need to that I need to factor in order to figure out whether this is the right direction for me or not.
Yeah,
So
because you don't know what you don't know, and that's
exactly.
that's why you bring other people in and continue learning for sure. So
Totally.
we're going to roll up into so next week you're going to be seeing us here as well, and we're going to talk about delegating, which is something that I've learned over time with your help. I feel like I've gotten really good at it. I'm trying to teach and shape that with my team as well as they're managing people. We'll talk a little bit about the 13 business hats
Yes.
in a business and how to leverage that with document, 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 document. That's all I
Sounds
say all the
boring,
time.
but it's not.
Yeah, it saves you so much time. It's good for the future. It's good for the business. Every business should have everything documented. It's a good thing. But it does seem boring, but it's like a part of it's your Bible, basically. So
Yep. Delegating is a big thing for a lot of people.
yeah, yeah, and how to do it. I mean, I thought
There's
you just
there's right
kinda
right
said,
and wrong
"Hey,
ways.
I
Yes.
need you to do this," and it would magically happen,
No.
and there's a definite human factor in that, in life in general, so love to talk about that for sure. So
No.
next show is next Friday, October 20th. And we look forward to having you join us. Of course, feel free to comment on your platforms. We will respond and we will definitely for questions next time if there's something you want to know.
Yep.
We'd
If you're
love to
watching this in whatever platform you're watching it, feel free to put in your questions in there, whether they're for this show or for last show or for the next show, and we will address them.
That sounds awesome. And it is Friday the 13th. So watch your back and have a great day. Thank you everyone.
See you next week.